The drive to my sister's place in Mesa felt longer than usual. Traffic moved, yet my mind lagged behind replaying Jason's voice at that dinner table. Her small house sat on a corner lot, plain and familiar. Stepping through the door gave me a brief moment of steadiness, though the holiday noise from earlier still clung to me. A cluster of messages waited on my phone. One cousin wrote, "Try to understand Jason. He just wants what's best." Another said, "He got carried away, but he's thinking about the family's future." That word future hit harder than intended. No one asked how I felt. They only explained him. A separate text slid in from Jason, "Dad, we should start transferring retirement authority. It's safer this way." The suggestion landed like a verdict. No greeting, no hesitation, just a decision he believed I should accept. Answering would have given him ground he didn't earn, so silence seemed wiser. A few blankets on the sofa needed folding. Picking them up kept my hands busy. The simple motion steadied me more than any reply ever could. The next morning offered no clarity. A prescription refill was due, so a trip to the clinic in Scottsdale made sense. Marcia Ortiz stood behind the counter, her badge tilted to one side, eyes narrowing when she saw me. "What happened?" "You look worn down," she asked. "Thanksgiving got a little rude," escaped from my mouth before I thought it through. "One of those nights you could say that?" Marcia leaned an elbow on the counter. "Did he talk to you like you weren't there?" The question caught me off guard. Something along those lines drifted out. People like her saw patterns others missed. She'd mentioned before how often families use claims of decline to seize control. "You should get your cognitive check done," she said. "Not for them. For you. It keeps things straight if anyone starts making moves." A part of me bristled. Another part understood she wasn't criticizing. She handed over a card with a doctor's name on it. "Just consider it," she added. Later that day, Jason texted again, asking me to swing by the house in North Phoenix to swap out an old set of keys. Standing in that driveway brought back years of weekend chores and quiet Saturday meals. He greeted me with a tone that didn't match the night before, soft, calculated, almost gentle. "Dad, you're good. I didn't mean to push," he said. "You wanted the keys," I replied, handing them over. He smiled like the two of us shared some private plan. "We also need to go over the retirement accounts. Someone should be listed with you." Not a question, an expectation. Turning away seemed safer than arguing. His voice followed me to the car. "Think it through soon. If you wait too long, things could get messy." The drive back to Mesa felt tense in a way I hadn't known before. My sister's house sat at the end of a short street, and pulling into her driveway offered a small pocket of calm, though it didn't last long. The moment the engine stopped, the phone lit up again. Messages kept rolling in, each one carrying someone else's opinion of what happened. One cousin wrote, "Jason meant well. Try to give him some slack." Another added, "He pushed too hard, but he's planning for the family's future." Every note circled the same idea: excuse Jason, absorb the hit, and move on. None of them asked why a grown man felt the right to treat his father like an afterthought. A final message appeared, Jason's name glowing at the top. "Dad, we should start transferring retirement authority to me. It's safer for everyone. No hesitation, no request, just direction." The living room looked the same as it always did. My sister kept it tidy, filled with simple things that reminded her of easier years. A sweatshirt lay across the sofa arm. Folding it helped settle my hands, even if the rest of me felt unsteady. The thought of answering Jason never crossed my mind. Feeding that conversation would have only fueled him. By midday, the refill notice for my prescription reminded me there were practical things to take care of. The clinic in Scottsdale wasn't far. Walking toward the reception desk, I spotted Marcia Ortiz arranging folders. Her eyes landed on my face a second longer than usual. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Thanksgiving got rough," came out with a low breath. "You don't look like someone who just had a rough dinner," she said. "You look like someone carrying more than that." There was no point pretending. Jason acted out. That's all. Acted out how he talked over me. Treated me like furniture. Her jaw tightened. Families pull stunts like that before they go for control. You'd be surprised how often I hear these stories. "I'm not declining," I said. "He's just impatient. That's exactly when people get themselves into trouble. Look, get your cognitive exam done. Not for them. For your protection." Her voice didn't accuse. It warned. She slipped a business card across the counter, an elder care specialist she trusted. The gesture stayed with me, even as I walked out. A few hours later, Jason sent another message asking me to stop by the house in North Phoenix so we could swap out a set of old keys. The request sounded harmless enough. When I pulled up, he stood by the door smiling in a way that didn't match the man I'd seen the night before. "Dad, good to see you," he said, stepping forward. "Here for the keys," I answered. He handed over a new set, then leaned against the doorframe like we were teammates discussing a strategy. "We need to take care of those accounts. Someone should be listed to help you. Makes life easier." That word again, should. He used it like a claim, not a suggestion. "Let's not rush," I said. "You call this rushing?" Jason lowered his voice. "Come on, Dad. You lost track of bills last month. I'm trying to help." That was one statement. It got buried in the mail. That's exactly why I'm saying this. You don't want to mess later. The conversation pressed on my ribs. Jason's tone held a sweetness he'd never used before, forced like someone rehearsing lines. His expression shifted when I reached for the keys. "Are you even listening?" he asked. "I heard you. No anger, no defense. Anything louder would only feed whatever story he planned to spin." The space between us stretched as I stepped toward the driveway. Behind me, his voice rose. "Dad, think about it. If you wait too long, it'll turn chaotic." A warning disguised as concern. It struck sharper than anything he'd said at the dinner table. The phone buzzed again as I drove away. More family opinions, more attempts to smooth things over on Jason's behalf. No one saw the shift in him, only the version he wanted them to see. Being misunderstood wasn't new, but this time the weight felt different, like something larger hovered just beyond reach. Mesa came into view again, and the last bit of sun cut across the street in long streaks as I parked. The house felt still but not comforting. A few cushions needed straightening. Doing that kept my thoughts from drifting too far. Responding to the messages wouldn't change anything, so the phone stayed face down on the counter. For a moment, I stood there, hand resting on the back of the couch, trying to make sense of how quickly the roles had shifted. A lifetime spent taking care of my family, and now my own son spoke, as if I required supervision. The disrespect hit deeper than he realized. A breath helped settle the frustration, though it didn't disappear. The best choice was to wait, stay steady, avoid snapping back. Reacting in anger would only make his argument stronger. My father used to say, "Don't let someone corner you with your own temper." Those words rang true now. The event at the Glendale Community Church drew a larger crowd than I expected. My aunt liked hosting these family meetups, and showing up felt easier than explaining why I stayed away. Stepping through the front entrance, I spotted Jason standing with a cluster of cousins. Their conversation dropped the moment they noticed me, each face shifting into something polite and guarded. One cousin blurted, "Uncle Tom, did you get your memory checked yet?" The question landed like a blow, checked for what escaped before I could mask the reaction. He stammered, searching for a way to soften it, but the damage was done. Jason let out a sigh, the kind people use when they want others to think they've been carrying a burden. Rather than engage with the group, taking a step back seemed safer. The crowd, the glances, the whispers, it all pressed in too tightly. The side door led to the church's small yard, so I moved that direction, trying to steady the churn in my chest. A voice drifted from behind a row of folding tables. Jason talked on his phone, speaking with a tone I'd never heard from him. "He's slipping. Dad's not the same. Give it a few months and I can take over everything." The words froze me where I stood. My fingers closed around my phone, the shake in my hand impossible to stop. Jason paused, as if listening to someone respond on the other end of the call, then added, "He won't fight it. He can't." Remaining there another second felt dangerous. Pulling away without drawing attention became the priority. By the time he stepped toward the yard, I'd already slipped around the corner. Driving back toward Mesa, mile after mile rolled past without sinking in. Thoughts kept circling one another. Had something changed about me? Had I missed signs others noticed first? The doubt crept in faster than expected. When family questions your stability, even a steady man starts wondering. Reaching for my phone, a message to Marcia typed itself through muscle memory. A simple "can we meet?" brought her response within minutes. We settled on the park near Camelback Mountain, a neutral space where nothing felt staged. She stood near a bench, arms folded. "You look like you haven't slept." "There was a family gathering," I said. "And it went well?" "No. Not even close. Talking through the church incident wasn't easy, but the words came out anyway. He said he could take over everything soon," I added. She shook her head slowly. "Get the cognitive exam done. Not to prove anything to Jason. Do it so he can't twist the story." Hearing her frame it that way shifted something. The suggestion no longer felt like an insult. It sounded like armor. "All right," I said. "I'll schedule it." "Good. Protect yourself before anything else." Walking back to the car, a sense of resolve replaced part of the confusion. Yet the victory didn't last long. An email alert flashed across the phone screen. Jason had contacted the entire family again. "Let's all support Dad through this sensitive period," he wrote. "He's not thinking clearly." The phrasing oozed sympathy, but every line painted me as a man sinking into decline. A second message arrived from my sister. "We need to talk seriously about your health." My jaw tightened. This wasn't concern, it was momentum. Jason had built a wave and pushed everyone onto it. Another notification chimed. This time from my bank. The subject line read, "Request submitted to update authorized signer." The message explained someone had initiated a form asking for changes to my retirement account access. A request like that meant someone wanted legal authority to act on my behalf. Only one person would try something like that. The phone felt heavier now. Even air in the car grew tight as the realization took hold. Jason wasn't waiting for permission. He was moving piece by piece, as if the outcome had already been decided. My thumb hovered over the email longer than I expected. There was no outrage, just a cold understanding that things were shifting faster than I'd allowed myself to believe. The engine started a moment later, but I didn't put the car in gear. Staring at that message, the question buried in the back of my mind surfaced again. Had I done anything at all to justify this attack on my competency? No answer came. Only the next thought control was slipping away if I didn't act soon. The clerk at the downtown Phoenix bank guided me to a desk near the back. Her expression caught somewhere between concern and procedure. She opened a file, tapped a few keys, then turned the monitor slightly. "Mr. Gallagher," she said, "a request was submitted to add an authorized signer on your retirement accounts. It was labeled as an elder assistance form." My stomach tightened. Who submitted it? It was filed under your son's name. If you hadn't come in, the accounts might have been temporarily restricted while we conducted a capacity review. Capacity review, those words burned. I want everything he submitted revoked, I said. Every request. Remove it, of course. We'll cancel the form and reset your security settings. Password updates, authentication changes, phone confirmations. Each step felt necessary, even if the process dragged on. The clerk never questioned my decisions. Her professionalism carried me through the unease gathering behind my ribs. After the last screen cleared, she handed me a printed summary. You're secure again. If anyone tries to change these settings, you'll be notified immediately. Stepping into the parking lot brought no relief. Jason leaned against my car, arms crossed, as if he'd been rehearsing his lines. Dad, he called out, you didn't answer my messages. Where have you been? His tone tried to mimic concern, but it didn't match the smug tilt of his shoulders. Running errands, I said, brushing past him. You could have told me. I've been worried about what you've been off lately. Forgetting things. You should have let me come with you. A breath slipped out of me, steady, but strained. Jason. I said I handled what needed handling. He stepped in closer. You're making this harder than it has to be. The family's asking questions. You don't want them thinking something's wrong. No response seemed safe. Remaining silent felt like the only option. Jason's patience cracked. Dad, come on. You want people to believe you're fine? You couldn't even keep up with the utilities last month. That bill got lost in the shuffle, I answered. It was one mistake. One that's not how it looked, he shot back. Turning away became the simplest escape. A few steps carried me to the driver's door. The keys jingled as they met the lock. Behind me, he raised his voice. You can ignore me all you want, but you can't ignore reality. The door closed on his last word. Starting the engine gave me something to focus on, even as my pulse kept climbing. Mesa wasn't far yet. The trip stretched longer with each mile. The phone rang halfway home, my sister's name flashing across the screen. Tom, she said. Before I greeted her, Jason told us what's going on. Why didn't you say anything? You can't hide health problems from family. There are no health problems, I replied. He said you've been confused. He said you're resisting help. None of that is true. She let out a sigh, heavy enough to sag through the speaker. Well, we're worried. The call ended with no resolution, only a widening distance. Everyone seemed to stand somewhere behind Jason, repeating his lines, as if he'd handed out a script. The isolation settled in while I drove through the stretch of road toward my sister's neighborhood. Houses passed by with the same trimmed lawns and parked trucks, but nothing about the familiar scenery eased the tension. A sinking realization crept in. Jason didn't just walk a step ahead. He'd built an entire narrative before I even understood what he planned. The sun leaned low when I pulled into a spot outside the Scottsdale Geriatric Clinic. The building wasn't large, just another medical office tucked between a dentist and a small insurance business. Taking the first step toward the entrance felt heavier than any physical strain. My hand reached for the metal handle. The smooth surface felt cooler than expected, and for a moment I stood there, thumb pressed against the edge, breath caught halfway. Not from fear, at least not exactly. It was the cost of realizing how far things had gone. The cognitive exam took place in a small consultation room at the Scottsdale Clinic. The doctor asked me to recall sequences, answer simple math problems, describe current events, and follow short instructions. Each task came easily enough, though a pulse of irritation lingered with every question. The man across from me kept a calm pace, writing notes as he moved through the checklist. After finishing, he set his clipboard down. Mr. Gallagher, he said, your cognitive function is normal. No signs of impairment. What I do see is stress, likely from family tension. He printed the certification immediately. The page still felt warm when he handed it over. Keep this somewhere safe. It might come in handy if anyone challenges your decision-making. Walking out into the lobby should have felt like a release. Instead, the phone buzzed twice before reaching the doors. Jason told us you've been forgetting things one cousin wrote. Another message followed. If you need help, we're here. Not one asked if the rumor was true. They'd already accepted his version. The silence around me seemed to thicken, not peaceful, but heavy with judgment. Sending Jason a message took only a moment. We need to talk, alone. His reply arrived fast. Come to Aunt Linda's place. I'll be out back. Driving to Glendale carried a sense of dread. Not fear, not shock, but the kind of weight felt before a conversation you can't avoid. The backyard held a few plastic chairs and a long table set up for whatever gathering they'd planned earlier. Jason stood near the fence with two cousins flanking him, as if this were a meeting he'd scheduled. You wanted to talk? He asked, voice too smooth. I did, I answered, keeping my tone even. Before saying more, he raised a hand, as if guiding the discussion. Before we get into it, Dad, everyone's concerned. You've been scatterbrained. You need someone to step in. One cousin chimed in. You misplaced important papers last month. We all heard about it. I misplaced one envelope, I said. Jason shook his head slowly. Dad, stop downplaying it. You're getting confused. Let me help before the state gets involved. The audacity of that line struck deeper than anything he'd said before. You're overstepping, I told him. No, he shot back. I'm trying to keep things from spiraling. You're not thinking straight. Arguing any louder would have only fueled his narrative. So I kept steady, even as the urge to snap back pressed against my teeth. One harsh sentence could become the evidence he needed. Jason spread his palms toward the cousins. See, he's shutting down. He doesn't want to admit it. A cousin added, We're just trying to help you, Tom. That's not what this is, I said quietly. Jason leaned in as though delivering a warning. You can fight me, but you're only making it harder on yourself. Something flickered through my chest. Then, not fear, not anger, but a kind of hollow disappointment that comes when someone you raised starts speaking to you as though you're an obstacle. Are you finished? I asked. No, he replied. Not until you let me take over your accounts. Dad, you're slipping. My jaw tightened, but I didn't give him the outburst he aimed for. Nothing about this was accidental. He wanted to display something messy to point to later. Standing still a moment longer helped me regain control over my breath. His words rolled on each one a small shove toward the edge. Think about what's best, Jason said, before someone else steps in and makes the choice for you. He spoke as though he'd already positioned himself as savior, the one ready to handle the mess. Instead of responding, I stepped past him. The wooden gate creaked under my hand as I pulled it open. Gravel shifted beneath my shoes. Behind me, Jason called out, Dad, the more you fight this, the worse it'll get. No response left my mouth. The words simply hung there while I walked toward the driveway. Each step carried a deeper sense of isolation, the kind that comes when people who should stand beside you start believing a lie because it's convenient. The certification paper remained tucked in my jacket, edges firm against my chest, as if reminding me it existed. But the truth was clear. The document might protect me legally, yet it did nothing to soften the sting of watching my own family line up behind someone who hadn't earned their trust. Marcia met me near a bench at the park on Camelback Mountain, her arms crossed as she watched me dig through my phone. Emails and notes spilled onto the screen messages from cousins, the latest from Jason, and the printed notices I had scribbled from the bank. I see what's happening, she said, her voice steady. You need to start collecting everything. Save messages, record calls, keep every email. You're not fighting him. You're protecting yourself. Her words felt like both instruction and reassurance. A tension I hadn't realized I'd carried loosened just slightly. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone again. An accidental recording file caught my attention, a clip I hadn't intended to make. It started at the backyard of my aunt's house the day Jason confronted me. Listening made my stomach tighten. Every plan he had whispered to the cousins, every line about taking over my accounts, every comment about my mental state was captured in his own voice. Hands gripped the edge of the bench, knuckles white. The recording wasn't something I sought. It had appeared as if, by fate, at the exact moment I needed it. I rewound and played it again, each sentence pounding through the memory of that day. Marcia leaned forward. That's it. That's the proof you need. Don't lose it. Make copies. Back it up. And keep calm. I nodded, swallowing a lump that rose in my throat. She didn't need to say more. The magnitude of having something solid, something Jason couldn't dispute, hit with clarity. A buzz in my pocket reminded me that the conflict wasn't over. Another email from Jason had just arrived, this one sent to the bank. Attached was a casual evaluation from a family friend, not a professional, not a doctor, meant to reinforce the story that I wasn't capable of managing my finances. See, Marcia said, reading over my shoulder. They're escalating. They want your accounts frozen while they gather support. You have to counteract it before it goes too far. The bank's reply came quickly. They needed confirmation. Every transaction, every signature, every account I controlled was now on hold pending verification. 48 hours of suspended authority stretched ahead like a countdown I couldn't ignore. I slipped the certification from the cognitive exam into my jacket pocket, reassuring myself that the document could back up the truth. The bank staff told me they would verify it, but it could take days. Each minute of waiting felt stretched, each text from Jason a shadow over the relief I thought I'd found. Marcia stayed with me while I walked toward the parking lot. No one said a word. Words were unnecessary. The weight of a fight I hadn't chosen pressed on both of us, but the presence of an ally softened the edge of tension just enough to breathe. Approaching the car, I opened the laptop I always carried, logging in to send the recording securely to my lawyer. The click of keys felt urgent, necessary, a small act of reclaiming control. Every line of the email, drafted and reread, held a weight I hadn't felt in weeks. The phone rang, jolting me. Jason's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the green button. He didn't leave a voicemail, only an impatient voice carried through. Dad. Don't do anything you don't understand. I let it ring out. No reply. The recording sent. The message delivered. Action, however small, became the only way forward. Marcia gave me a brief nod, silent support for the steps I had taken. The day had shifted from the abstract worry of rumors and whispers into tangible proof. I hadn't asked for luck, only clarity, and it had landed where it mattered. The bank would verify. The messages were saved. The evidence existed. Yet the unease lingered, a reminder that Jason's reach, though now exposed, could stretch into corners I hadn't considered. Each step beyond the park, toward the car, toward the next move, carried a mix of relief and anticipation, the tension coiling in a different shape, now ready for what would come next. Sliding the laptop shut, I took a deep breath and sat back in the driver's seat. The recording, the messages, the certification. These were not victories, yet only tools. Jason's interference, persistent and precise, had forced me to acknowledge that protecting myself meant moving decisively, not reacting out of instinct. The office smelled faintly of paper and coffee. Marcia had already left, leaving me alone with the elder law attorney as I spread the evidence across the desk. The recording sat next to printouts of emails, text messages, and the form Jason had submitted to the bank. Everything lined up like pieces on a chessboard, except these pieces had been moved without my consent. "This is serious," the attorney said, leaning forward. "Attempted elder financial exploitation. You have every right to file a complaint." Hearing the words made something settle in my chest. Years of avoiding confrontation, of staying calm while Jason pushed, had left me exposed. Every instance of patience now revealed itself as a vulnerability. The danger wasn't subtle anymore. It was unmistakable. "Don't respond to him," the lawyer continued. "You act legally and deliberately, not emotionally. Let the process unfold. Any reaction on your part could undermine your position." I nodded, absorbing each word. Control had to come from patience and evidence, not emotion. The idea of speaking out loudly, yelling, or arguing would only feed the story Jason had tried to spin for months. A phone buzz interrupted my thoughts. A call from a nephew, Uncle Tom. "Jason wants the family to sign a support form tonight at Peoria." The message landed hard. They were moving forward without waiting for my side. A quick glance at the clock told me there was no time to delay. The lawyer gave a small nod, acknowledging my urgency as I stood. Driving to Peoria, the tension in my chest tightened with every turn. Parking outside the event hall, I took a slow breath, reminding myself the evidence was solid and my purpose clear. The room beyond the doors held chairs, tables, and a crowd anticipating Jason's statements. He stood at the center, file in hand, rehearsing the lines he had whispered to others for weeks. Stepping forward, I placed the recording and the doctor's certificate on the table without a word. The objects carried more weight than any explanation I could offer. They were proof tangible and undeniable. Jason turned, eyes narrowing. "Dad, you're imagining things," he said, voice sharp, leaning toward the group. The attorney, already positioned to intervene, held up a hand. "Everyone listen. This recording demonstrates what Mr. Gallagher just described." The room stilled as Jason's words repeated from the recording. Every sentence he had used to claim control, to assert my incapacity, played out to the assembled family. Just a few months, and I can take everything. His voice rang from the phone speaker, unyielding and matter-of-fact. A collective pause followed. The cousins exchanged looks, some frowning, others unable to meet his gaze. The weight of evidence shifted the room's energy in an instant. Jason stepped back, clearly caught off balance. He tried to regain composure, opening his mouth, searching for some excuse, but each syllable faltered. His gestures became smaller, less assertive. There was no ally nearby willing to dispute what had been played. I stayed silent. No added words, no defense, no explanation beyond the documents on the table. The attorney's presence and the recording did the work I hadn't been able to do through argument alone. Some relatives leaned forward, whispering softly to each other. Even those who had seemed neutral shifted their posture, eyes narrowing toward Jason. The narrative he had built for weeks crumbled in real time. He glanced around, mouth opening, then closing. The pause stretched his confidence, fading. Each tick of the second hand on the wall reminded me that time now worked for me, not against. I adjusted the papers slightly, making sure the recording and certification were visible. No one needed to ask for proof. It was undeniable. Jason's lips moved, forming sentences that no one could hear, clearly muffled by the authority of evidence. One cousin murmured, I didn't know." Another simply shook their head, the disbelief in their gestures cutting through the room. Jason's attempt at dominance faltered entirely. No threats, no charm, no manipulation could reclaim the space the recording had opened. The authority he had assumed vanished under the weight of his own words. I remained at the table, steady, feeling a strange calm seep in. Every second passed without confrontation, yet the room's tension had shifted decisively. The narrative he tried to create for himself to twist me into incapacity collapsed silently, but completely. Family members' eyes lingered on him, and he finally took a small, unsteady step backward. His posture tightened, shoulders rising slightly, then dropping as if the weight of their judgment pressed against him. The attorney leaned slightly toward me, a small nod confirming what I already sensed: the first decisive move had been made. The recording and certification had restored the balance not through argument, but by the unassailable truth laid out in front of everyone. I let my hands fall to my sides, straightening slightly still, without speaking. Jason's gaze flicked across the room, landing on faces that had once followed him unquestioningly, now clearly divided. No one needed to applaud, no one called out. The shift was palpable in the stillness. My role was no longer passive. Evidence had taken the place of words, and the first steps of reclaiming control had begun. Jason's words stumbled each sentence, trying to justify what he had done, yet every explanation revealed more of his intentions. He gestured, pointed at papers, tried to shift attention to minor mistakes, but nothing could cover the pattern. No one moved to defend him. No hand reached to steady his narrative. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Aunt Linda picked up her phone, dialing the bank as she had promised. Within minutes, she confirmed she had heard the recording herself. A clerk called back almost immediately, lifting the temporary hold on my retirement accounts. The relief settled quickly, though it didn't erase the tension that lingered. One cousin suggested contacting the authorities, mentioning the potential for financial fraud. "No," I said calmly. "I'll let the lawyer handle it. That's the proper route." The cousin nodded, accepting the boundary. Control belonged to procedure. Now, not panic. Jason's eyes darted around, seeking support, but none came. The familiar nods and glances he relied on were absent. His posture stiffened, a slight tremor passing through the way he held his hands. Without allies, his voice lost its force. Each word hung unsupported, his arguments dissolving in the weight of truth laid before everyone. A realization solidified in me: staying silent, trying to avoid conflict for years, hadn't preserved peace. It had given permission to overstep, to erase boundaries I never properly defended. Recognition of that truth carried neither anger nor satisfaction, just clarity. I gathered the documents, sliding the recording, the certification, and emails into a manila folder. There was no speech, no explanation. The papers themselves carried the story, and that was enough. Step by step, I moved toward the door, holding the folder to my chest. Each movement was deliberate, unhurried, unprovocative. Jason called out after me, a sharp edge to his tone. "Dad, wait, listen." No one answered. His voice faltered, the room remaining motionless. The silence underscored his isolation, a reflection of the choices he had made, and the trust he had broken. Nothing he said could reclaim the space lost through truth and evidence. By the next morning, the practical steps were complete. The accounts had been resecured, all access for Jason revoked. Legal oversight ensured he could not interfere further. Notifications confirmed the changes, each one removing the last thread of his influence. He had lost more than access. The family's perception shifted, and whispers of distrust followed him into the community. Questions circulated about the misrepresentation and the audacity of his attempts. Reputation, once taken for granted, now carried a weight no excuse could erase. The following day, signing the papers at the bank felt like reclaiming a fragment of stability. Each signature confirmed authority, each initial a boundary restored. The procedural clarity contrasted sharply with the chaos that had preceded it, a reminder that protection often relied on documentation, not confrontation. Returning to my routine, I settled into my part-time consulting work at Phoenix, embracing familiar tasks that offered a sense of normalcy. Mornings followed the same rhythm, Yet the knowledge of the past days lingered, reshaping how I approached interaction and trust. On the weekend, I drove with Marcia to the trailhead near Camelback Mountain. Hiking had been a plan postponed repeatedly over the years, always pushed aside for obligations. This time it felt less like leisure and more like reclamation, a deliberate act of self-preservation. Footsteps pressed against the dirt path, rhythm steady, neither hurried nor hesitant. Conversation flowed between practical instructions and casual observations. At a fork in the trail, I paused, adjusting the straps on my backpack. The incline ahead required attention, not reflection, yet the sunlight on the path reminded me that movement itself was a kind of clarity. Shadows shifted across the ground as if acknowledging progress. Marcia waited, eyes scanning the trail patient without prompting. The simple presence of someone steady reinforced the lessons learned in recent weeks. Boundaries could be defended. Facts mattered more than arguments, and allies, even unexpected ones, strengthened resolve. We continued side by side, the path winding ahead. Each step carried a rhythm of determination, a normal act imbued with quiet significance. The trail demanded focus, the exertion required energy, and the forward motion kept doubts at bay. No words about Jason passed between us. There was no victory speech, no recounting of wrongs. Only the measured pace, the deliberate steps, and the acknowledgement that the work of maintaining boundaries extended beyond confrontation into the quiet, everyday acts of living. I moved along the worn trail, each footfall a signal that life continued, responsibilities resumed, and the past no longer dictated the pace of my choices. Nothing behind demanded attention now. Only the path ahead, the rhythm of steps, and the sound of breathing shared in steady companionship.